Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 169 of my modded Factorio playthrough. We're getting close to being able to rebuild this bus here. There's just a couple more things that we need to take care of on our metal production here. Certainly, sodium hydroxide seems a little slow, so we're going to want to upgrade that. But one problem we have is we're just producing a ton of aluminum. So if we follow this to its source, you might think, well, of course we're making aluminum. We have an aluminum train we need to fill up. Well, let's flip these the other way and unload this train. So if we look here, it says that the train is requesting 31,000 aluminum coils. But if we go into LTN, no station is requesting it, which is odd. And specifically, if we go into our science setup here, you can see that we are actually overloaded on both brass and aluminum. So much so that it's backed up into this warehouse. And you see, this warehouse is super overloaded. It's more than half full, and it should have nothing in there. And if we check the wire, it says that we have a positive value of 58,000 for brass plates. And that should never be positive. Because what these numbers are showing is how much less than maximum capacity we have. So clearly something went wrong to deliver this much stuff here. But it's also odd that it certainly doesn't need any more resources, and yet there's a train there trying to gather more. Well, if we go here to trains, we kind of go down the list and we find the problem. Parked at depot with residue. So clearly we have some insight on how the train handles itself. That what happened was, I imagine, that it stopped here, got full of coils, went down here to deliver. It couldn't, because all these warehouses were full, and then came back. Because that's the only reason I can think that it would still be here, because it's not being requested for anything. And previously we did have that problem with a glass train that was sitting right here waiting to get in. I think it was glass. And I have a theory about what was going on here. Where, let's say this warehouse starts decreasing and it gets to the point that it needs a quarter of a train. Well, a quarter train is the minimum amount that it will send a train for. So let's say with aluminum. And it sends a train down. But what happens if its situation is like this, where the aluminum train is only partially filled? Well, this station is designed to where even if a partial train is requested, it will sit here until it's fully loaded before it leaves. That's not normally a big problem, but what happens if this station then, the amount starts going down and it requests another partial train? Well, then you could be in a situation where you have two partial trains that it requested, but what it got was two full trains, which is not great. And there is a setting for this. The finished loading setting here. Right now I have it on, which means the train will always stay there until it's fully loaded. You could turn it off and they'll leave the second they have the resources on hand that was requested, but that can run into its own problem where it says inserters at loading stations will get stuck. So it's not a big deal if you have one resource type, because who cares if you have an inserter just sitting there. It can create some bigger problems when you have dynamic stations. Like this one right here, where you really don't want trains leaving while these inserters are holding on to items. And this is a perfect count station. So everything that it will supply the train will go in. So changing that setting could potentially cause problems here, but we can actually simulate that setting without actually changing it. And actually, for this train, I kind of want to use it. Of course, it's just asking to be full with aluminum coils here. But let's just disable it. Let it keep emptying itself. We have our train here. It's slowly getting unloaded, and it's kind of inverted of what it should be doing. But we have an idea of what signals we have to work with here. It's kind of hard to see, but we have three things we can connect to. This thing right here, which is for the station itself. This one right here, which is the LTN station output, and that's the input. We're using the input to tell the station what kind of station it is, and then that's being sent down. However, we do have some other things we can kind of select here, and it's kind of hard to tell because you hover over here and there's no signal. But if you check over here, the green wire I placed, the signal we're getting right there tells us the current capacity of the train, and this is similar to how the dynamic station worked. So what we can do is compare the train's current contents with the requested contents and turn on or off these inserters based on that condition. Of course, this train's going to be empty now, so it's going to be kind of hard to tell. But let's grab some arithmetic combinators and a decider. Let's put the two arithmetics there. And then the decider. We need some power there. So we need to grab some signals. One of them can be the status of the train, and one of them can be the request. So we go in here, say aluminum sheet coil times 1, because we just want to isolate that, and we'll say R for request. So now the signal goes through and it says we need 31,000. This one right here can be the count. So we'll do coil times 1, and output is C for the count. It looks like we've still got something. Ah, okay. This basically just filled up while we were here. But we got a little bit left on these trains in the bottom, so I guess we can see it work a little bit here. Of course, these numbers are wrong because this train shouldn't be requesting anything. It's just it got confused. But there's our count and there's our request. So we send the signals in that if count is less than the request, output 1 green square. So now we're getting a green square. And what I'm going to use this green square for is turning on and off these inserters. So it's kind of hard to follow all those wires, but the enabled condition is just that there's a green square. And of course now they're all trying to turn on because we got a train here. But hopefully this setup should prevent trains from getting overfilled in the future. And unfortunately we're going to have to place this on every single dynamic train station, which is going to take a little bit of time. But we're not making any requests right now, so I can probably do that a little later off camera. But we've got a clog to fix. So let's take this train and control it manually. When was the last time we did this? Let's just leave it kind of sitting right here for now. Because we've got a bit of a clog here, as you can see. That's more than a bit of a clog. And that should never happen. The train should only request resources to fill up these depots. The center one is just a sorting depot, so if it's ever full, then something went wrong. Oh wow, that's that is extra super duper full. Guess gotta make 2 trips. I think this was created during the copper shortage, because I believe that we were short on copper for a while because we didn't have any oxygen. So as a result, I bet the brass plates were running quite far behind. Well, let's pick those up there, so then we can open this. and do quick drops. And we're pretty good here. Let's just take one more stack out of here, so it looks nice and clean again. And we check the numbers. And they are all negative, like they should be. Wow. Even that warehouse is all full. Well, we'll have to temporarily open that up so we have space to throw stuff. And that should be all of that, although probably want to have like one stack for ourselves. And we gotta plop the aluminum in here. And there we go. Oh yes, and of course, flip the inserters the correct direction. So yeah, we'll have to upgrade all of the stations, but that does kind of require placing some wires down, and that's a little annoying. I kind of don't want to go through the entire factory doing this, but for now, we can put them at the materials production here with the metals. Because this is the location it's most likely going to matter. I still don't know why it sent 2 trains for glass. I mean, it could be one of the trains was confused and was going back to the station. Kind of like how aluminum did, but we'll have to keep an eye on it and see how it works in the future. And now we got the annoying job of wiring all these in. Guess I could, like, redo each station. Pick them all up, but I kind of don't want to. Oh no. Either way you do it, it sounds like it's going to be a little bit of work. Okay, I think that does it for all the stations. We will have to make some more requests, probably by doing some science, to find out if it works. But for now, this looks pretty good. The factory's pretty quiet, so we won't see much happen here. Another thing we want to work on is this sodium hydroxide, and it seems to be finally filling up, but I think that our output is too small. It's a problem that the production of the sodium hydroxide is all the way down here, and it's being sent by drone. So that's a lot of drone work, and it's a lot of delay in when this system runs and when the sodium hydroxide actually makes it up there. And actually, for once, it looks like it's running at full power. I guess that means that we're not overloaded on hydrogen anymore. That's probably it. Yeah. And now the system can operate normally. It is interesting that these 2 tanks are at different levels, probably because different amounts of fluid is being sent in each one. That might be a problem later. But it seems to be working fine for now. But look at all that mud we're making. It's probably too much at this point. I've been producing mud in this way this whole time, just because I know we need it for trees here and for other farming. But it looks like it's actually overloaded. And oh yeah, look at that. We have 4.3k of mud here. And this machine is running as fast as it can, and we're actually... Well, we're not quite overloaded on mud, but we're getting there. This warehouse is getting pretty full. So as a result, we probably don't want to use these. We probably want to do the salination plants, because we finally have a mud surplus. It hasn't really been the case up until this point. But another thing is we need more sodium hydroxide. Probably a lot more. Because, let's see here. We select all these. We're going to need 25 per second. Plus science needs another 5. So we're looking at least a red belt's worth of sodium hydroxide. And something tells me this is not it. Nope. Less than a third. So that's probably contributing to why things are getting a little slow. So we need to upgrade and move it. and also change the way that it operates so it's more efficient. It probably needs to be somewhere in close proximity to this so it could just have a belt go in, and probably one red belt is good enough. I mean, that's basically the maximum of the factory, but that should work for now. It would be a little in the way to put it right here because you see that these belts are going up, and as these expand they might bump into it, but where else is it gonna go? It can't really go here for the same reason, and it could go all the way down here, I suppose, and run a belt over. That would give it a little bit of space for expansion. Yeah, maybe we should do that. Give it as much space as we can before things be a problem. However, we've also got another way of producing sodium hydroxide now. If you look here at our storage warehouses, for all our junk, we have 146,000 salts just sitting around. And there's a reason for that, because with Blue Science, we now have access to chlorine processing 3, and we can electrolyze salt and create sodium, and that will require electrodes, which is a little annoying, but we can, and create lots of chlorine, but hey, it makes sodium, and also it'll give us the ability to make chlorine and hydrogen from hydrogen chloride gas if we wanted to reverse the process. We can make hydrochloric acid directly from salt. We'll have to check to see if that's a more efficient method or not, but what we've got works. So we'll just have to see, but we can make phosgene gas if we need it, and we can electrolyze hydrochloric acid if we need to. So we got some neat processes there. Oh, it looks like it's researching extremely quickly, so we're not really going to see anything too interesting here. Barely operating. Well, we need to calculate how much of this salt we need to electrolyze. And I forget exactly which one it is. Is it crotinium here? Looks like it. And we're going to produce a maximum of 7.5. We'll come up in here, do a new line. We need chlorine gas from salt. Set it to input, and the input is 7.5. So not much is really needed to handle all of this. Less than one machine. So we'll put some efficiencies in there. You'll need to have some logic dealing with this chlorine gas, because we're almost certainly going to have to dump it, as we are with making sodium hydroxide. This will just be some free sodium. And we can go into sodium processing here, and we have lots of things that we can do. The one we're here for is taking that sodium, adding water, and we get our sodium hydroxide. But there's lots of stuff we can do, like make a sodium hydroxide solution, or take that solution and turn it back into the original components. We can electrolyze the sodium hydroxide to get the sodium. We can make sodium carbonate, or take that sodium carbonate and electrolyze it to get sodium hydroxide solution, which we can then turn into sodium hydroxide through a process. And that's actually kind of noteworthy, because I believe we have a system that has been long since unhooked up. It's the more efficient method of making carbon, at least from coke here. And I think the reason why we haven't been using it is because it creates sodium carbonate, and we had no way of processing it. But now we can, where we would electrolyze it into the sodium hydroxide solution and get some byproducts. The solution we would turn into the sodium hydroxide again, and then it could go back into the system and repeat. So later we'll have to consider hooking that up. But now we finally can, if we wanted to, and have it be closed loop anyway. Then we can do sodium cyanide, and we can actually create sodium sulfate as opposed to have it as a byproduct. And we can get sodium back from it if we need to. So, as you'd imagine, sodium processing unlocks all types of ways of processing sodium. And that looks like it's going to research very quickly as well. And just like that, it's done. We'll come back in here. We'll grab the sodium. And we need to turn it into sodium hydroxide. We probably don't want to empty all of the stuff we have yet, because we might want to be saving the salt for other processes in the future. So we'll need to have some kind of logic built in, but see, it's pretty straightforward. Doesn't really require very much, just one machine. So in go the efficiencies again. And that will create a little bit of sodium hydroxide. But we got some inputs and outputs here. We need to clean electrodes, which we can do right here, but it looks like it doesn't really like it to be on the same line. So we'll go there and just grab the dirty ones and have this get processed, but it doesn't need to be an advanced plant. Regular plant works just fine. And we'll put some efficiencies in there. And we're looking pretty good. We just need now the purified water, which goes into both processes. And more efficiencies. So it's pretty small. Just a couple of single machines, basically, to handle all of this. And we'll have some random byproducts to throw on the bus, but they're pretty small. And probably that chlorine is just going to instantly get vented, because that's a lot of chlorine. But this is the ideal way, at least with the way the factory's set up right now, to make sodium hydroxide. It's basically free with that salt. So we'll want this to run basically all the time to try to fill this warehouse up to a minimum amount. And this warehouse probably isn't the best place for this. We might want to move it somewhere, but we'll worry about that in a bit. And then the other method is basically this. It's kind of annoying to have to rebuild the thing, but we might not have to, because a lot of this is already sized properly. So we know that we have 9 machines here. So let's see what we can do with 9 machines. See, we're making some kind of request. Glass. That must have been just barely. I don't know if there's going to be anything to see here. Well, I guess we will see if this process works with these settings. Certainly the numbers are going up, so that part looks like it's working. Well, in this case, it probably won't matter, because this is asking for a full train. And the train will leave when it gets full, so this logic doesn't really affect anything. The inserters are going to stop when the train's full anyway. But at least it turned on. So it's probably working, at least to some extent. So we need to do this electrolysis. Let's see what it's going to take to get 25. 25 electrolyzers. Well, we have speed modules. And that's going to require even more. Yeah, we might have to rebuild it. And that is so much chlorine. And we need that saline water. And now that we're at the point where we have more than enough mud, and basically overloading on it, because this poor thing is trying its best to keep up, but it can't really. That warehouse is almost completely full. And 10 out of 10 drones grabbing mud to go in there, so there's not even enough drones available for that. So we're at the point where we should consider making this with salination plants instead. And we could dump that salt in there too, but the salt's valuable, so we don't really want to do that. We'll just make it this way. And require also a huge number of salination plants. Speed modules help, but not really. And then finally, lots and lots of water. I was thinking we could do groundwater pumps for that, but that is so much. But the problem is this location is just completely in the middle of nothing. So I don't think we have much of a choice there. So we're going to have to use our water here, and let's see if we can select the correct machine. Not really, not with that anyway. Might just have to do that math by hand. Because we know we've got pump jack 3s here, and they'll put out 450 a second. That's so much electricity. Let's just set this for offshore pumps for now. Yeah, and that's a lot less. Might just have to send this along a very long belt, because the logistics of dealing with this water is going to be much worse than that of a single belt of sodium hydroxide moving around. So let's change the way these numbers are calculated. Let's hit that to 0 and compute this on a pump by pump basis. So we have 1 pump going into 9 plants and then 5 electrolyzers, or 6. That seems pretty good. And then if we have 3 of these, we'll basically be producing the correct amount. Okay. So, with this sodium hydroxide, this is all basically going to move. Guess we'll just unhook it. Let it run out. And let's let this run out for now as well. So we need to build 3 copies. Can probably reuse quite a bit of this, because we need 6 of these. So I guess we can grab that. We can kind of just plop it somewhere else so we can make it look nice. I'll leave all the pipes there for now, but I will grab the electrolyzers. Well, that's not quite enough. Needed 6. Let's make sure the pipe visualizer looks okay. Kind of seems to. Then 9 of these salination plants, which require lots and lots of resources. There we go. Something like that. Set these to the correct recipe. Didn't need more pipes, so I think I'll start grabbing them here. And it looks like we have this logic here, but we shouldn't need it anymore. Yeah, basically all this stuff's going to move, so we don't really have to worry too much about it. And actually, this whole thing is going to get moved, so in fact, it's not even going to get reused at all. So let's just pick it up and gather the resources. That was weird. Well, it went away, so I guess that's okay. No graphical glitches. There we go. And then this pipe will go outwards towards the coast to get water, 1 pump's worth. And I believe we needed lots of speed modules. Then we'll need 3 of those. But also remember that we need to keep some resources on hand for making the hydrogen chloride gas and the hydrochloric acid. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to look at the different methods we have available to us to make hydrochloric acid and keep working on this build. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.